Hello, I'm Mary V. Today, let's talk about crucial elements of bowing. So many people find that the bowing that they can do is really all just in the middle to the upper half like that, and they just use their forearm to bow really. And when they're asked to go up to the heel, they find it incredibly difficult. And the hand starts feeling that the bow is far too heavy, everything's very rigid. So what's going on there? What's missing? It's incredibly necessary to bowing to use the elbow and the upper half of the arm, and very often it gets left behind like this. It's too low and it's not really being used, and it puts a tremendous pressure on the wrist, the hand and the fingers. Generally it looks like this. The elbow is way down and the fingers are doing all the work. So if this is you and your elbow is really locked, then there's quite an easy way to fix this. It's to put your bow on the string and put your elbow up and down like that. Okay? So that's the first thing to do. So what happens normally is in the middle there's a reluctance for the upper arm to keep moving up with the bow, and instead the upper arm goes down and the elbow closes in like that. So instead of the upper arm coming up like this, instead a lot of people play like this. So ideally the arm is above the bow all the time instead of below. You see how the elbow, which is causing the upper arm to not really take part in the stroke, and it's all done with this part from the elbow down. So by having that, you're actually not helping anything at all, and you're restricting yourself to really having to play like this, using a tiny amount of bow. So the best way to do this is to face forward straight into the mirror and have a look at your style and see if it's very crushed up with your low elbow. So go to the middle and move your elbow up a little bit, and make sure that your arm and your elbow is above the bow at all times. So when I'm at the heel, I'm using my forearm to hold the weight of the bow like that, right? And my fingers only have to do a very, very small amount of cushioning because the weight of the bow is being held by the forearm. So I transfer the weight using my forearm like this, about here. So all my fingers really need to do is a tiny little movement, and it's mainly coming from the wrist. It's a sideways movement like this. So this movement is very important because it means that it liberates the fingers from having to make enormous weight changes and take on everything about the bow at the heel. No, it's really just a small wrist movement, and the fingers don't really have to change shape much. Just a little bit of cushioning like that. So let's have a look at that at the heel. So in the middle of the bow, my arm and wrist and hand are really flat. And then you'll see when I come up to the heel, my hand drops a little bit. Then when I go down to the tip, you'll see my wrist changing shape again. So my wrist goes from that to that. So in order for the bow to go straight, we've got to move our wrist into a different position. So that's the other thing to do, is to look sideways, exactly sideways, and check what your wrist is doing and whether your bow is straight. And to get a really straight bow, there's a feeling of actually going out like that, right? So pushing forward like that. So in bowing, there are movements of the elbow and the upper arm coming up. There are movements side to side with the wrist a little bit, and there are changes of shape of the wrist like that. If you think about the forearm leading the stroke all the way up and leading all the way down, and that helps you to make the correct wrist movements up and down. So these things need to be tackled one thing at a time. Have a look at the height of your elbow, right? And see whether you can move your wrist from side to side a little bit, and then see if you can alter the shape of your wrist when you're at the tip and when you're at the heel. So none of these things are extreme, right? It's just a little bit for the purposes of cushioning the stroke. So I hope you get on well with your bowing experiments, and I'll leave it there. Bye for now. Bye.